So here's where we left off in the last video, multiplying out all of these expressions with x's in them. And now we want to think about how to go from our answer and figure out the factors above. All right. So when we're trying to work backwards, when we're factoring, we're going to remember that that x squared term comes from the first term. The constant term comes from the last two terms, but the middle term is the O and the I smushed together by addition or subtraction. All right. So when I look at this 35, I would say what multiplies to give me negative 35? Well, it would have to be a negative 7 times 5 or 7 times negative 5. But which of those choices would add or subtract together to give me negative 2x? And that's what's going to lead us to our solution. All right, so let's try one of those. X squared minus 2x minus 8. We're going to try to reverse engineer this and figure out what factors somebody had to multiply out to get that quadratic. All right, so I know that that x squared term comes from the first two terms. This is the easy part. You know you need an x times an x to get x squared. We know that the number, the negative 8, comes from the last terms, those numbers. That's going to be the hard part, picking out the numbers. So if I have negative 8, I know I could have multiplied, let's see, I could do 8 and negative 1. I could do negative 8 times positive 1. I could do 4 times negative 2, and I could do negative 4 times positive 2. And those are all the things that are going to multiply to give me 8. And then we just look at those pairs of numbers and say, which ones can I add together to get a negative 2? And that's going to be this one. Negative 4 plus 2 would give me a negative 2 in the middle. All right, so I'm going to pick negative 4 and positive 2. All right, and then when I do the O and the I, the outer and the inner, they combine to give me negative 2x, right? So that's our factorization. All right, if you learned some other method to factor quadratics and you can get to the same answer as me, that's fine. I don't care what method you use. There's about 865 of them out there in the world. Let's try this one. X squared plus 7x plus 6. Again, we're going to try to find our two factors that multiply to give us this. All right, so I know that this came from my first two terms. Again, just an x and an x. And then, let's see, the 6 is my last. So what kinds of things multiply to give us positive 6? Okay, we could have 6 and 1. We could actually have negative 6 and negative 1. We could have 2 times 3. And we could have negative 2 and negative 3. And those are all the things I can think of that would multiply to give you a positive 6. And then we just got to ask ourselves which ones add up to give us 7 when we combine our outer and inner terms. And that's going to be this one, positive 6 and positive 1. All right. And again, if you use any other method and you got the same answer, it's good. Go for it. All right. So this one looks a little scary. I get x to the 4th in here instead of x squared. So this one, we're going to have to remember our greatest common factor factoring, our GCF factoring. And this is where I look at all three of these terms and I say, what do they all have in common? Okay, they all have at least an x squared. They have that in common. And their coefficients are all divisible by 3. So before I even start to think about coming up with those parentheses factors, I'm going to factor out a 3x squared. Okay, so what you're doing is you're kind of undistributing a 3x squared to all three of these terms. So for 3x squared, what would I need to multiply it by to get 3x to the 4th? You would need an x squared. Again, you can just kind of mentally distribute this here and see that I would get 3x to the 4th. So we're kind of undistributing. And then the middle term, I need a 6x cubed. So the 3 needs a 2 to make it into a 6. And I need an x, so x squared times x would give me x cubed. And then my last term, see how many times does 3 go into 45? That's 15. So I need a minus 15. And I factored out x squared, so I don't have any x's left there. So once I've done that, I've got this x squared plus 2x minus 15. That I can factor using our regular old technique that we've been doing on the last two. But the 3x squared is still part of your answer, so go ahead and copy it there. All right, and now we're going to do our FOIL factoring. Right, where we say that the first two terms have to give me x squared. Then I got to think about negative 15. Negative 15 could be negative 15 and positive 1. 15 and negative 1 could be 5 and negative 3. or it could be -5 and +3. And those are all the ways that we can multiply integers to get -15. And I'm looking for ones that are going to add together to give me a positive 2x. That's going to be those. So I'm going to need +5 -3. All right, so notice I haven't asked you to set this equal to 0 or to solve for x. All I've asked you to do is to factor it. All right, when we get together in class, we're going to talk about what to do when that x squared term, when we're factoring, what to do if it has a coefficient on it, because that makes things a little more complicated.